Hello, my friends. This is The Art of Prepping. Hope you guys are doing well today. In this video, we're going to review over 20 cell phone battery efficiency tips. These tips can be very helpful for a variety of uses. In particular, if you're in a situation where you're not able to power your phone, you can't get a charge to your phone. And if you're not able to recharge your phone, then you're at the mercy of whatever you have in your battery to work with. So this is just using what you have. And then there's a few other various tips that are just about general phone efficiency. And so I'll just start out with one of those right now. So one of those peripheral tips would be that, and some of these are pretty obvious, but some of them you may not have thought about before, is that phones charge faster when they're off. And every phone's a little different than another phone, so it just depends on what you have. And because of that, I'm not going to go into great detail about menu options and things because we all have different phones. But it should not come to a surprise that when you turn the phone off and you charge it, it can charge, in some cases, twice as fast. Use power saving modes. Like on my phone, it actually says power saver. And there's another mode called data saver. And there's even browser modes. There's a light mode, and it actually reduces basically the data transfer rate. So just very helpful when you try to conserve battery power. You want to close open apps when not in use, because these apps that run in the background, they consume energy to run in the background. And it also slows your phone down. Also, you can use less power by dimming your screen. So just pay attention to the screen brightness setting. If you typically have it turned all the way up, but don't need it all the way up to see it, then turn it down a bit. You know, I typically keep mine almost on the lowest setting. I have very sensitive eyes and I can see just fine. And so I try to keep it as low as possible. And at night though, sometimes the lowest setting is still too bright. So there are apps to bring the brightness of your screen even lower than the factory options. Black and white screens are more efficient than color screens. So it shouldn't be a surprise that it causes the phone to use more energy when you have color. I guess color generation is not going to be obviously as efficient as than a black and white screen. Some phones have that option readily available to just turn off the color, but like on my phone, it's like a very deep menu option that you really have to know where to look to find it. In fact, I had to, go on a video tutorial to even help me find this deep menu option. But certainly though, if you really have to conserve some energy, this can buy you at least a few minutes more, maybe more than even a few minutes depending on your phone, but certainly can help you conserve energy. Sometimes they refer to this mode as well because there's different versions of just going to a black and white screen. Some of them I've seen reference to like a grayscale matrix screen, and there's different other words for that as well. But there's also one that is very specific, a specific black and white format, and that is the night mode, sometimes referred to as a nighttime mode. And that uses a black background with the words or whatever you're looking at, the image in white, or a grayscale, if it has other dimension. But in some cases, on some phones, there's almost no grayscale. It's just really black and white. So I guess the less options that the phone has to have to figure out, the more efficient the battery. So for example, if it doesn't use color, it's more efficient. And if it doesn't have to worry about a huge grayscale, then it's more efficient. So if all that it has to really worry about is black and white, that's pretty simple. And I could see that being more conservative, right, to your battery. Messenger apps, texting, SMS, emailing, these are going to be much more efficient on average than voice or video calls. This should be obviously something that makes sense to you because there's a lot more going on when you make a voice call or a video call. There's a ton of data transfer there. People are just not aware of it. And, when I first got my phone, I couldn't see a great difference when I would text all day versus talk on the phone all day. But it really was there. I don't think I was really paying attention. And when you start really paying attention, you'll see that there's a difference. In particular, especially when the battery gets older. Like my phone is now about 18 months old, and there's a huge difference now when I just send maybe like a handful of text versus having a handful of phone conversations, like voice conversations. There's a huge difference in terms of the battery consumption. And this kind of leads me into this next point that, it's good to maintain your phone and to replace the battery when the performance starts to degrade. Like I'm due for a new battery, either that or a new phone. And so for some people, it's every year, like once a year, they get a new battery. Some people who don't use their phones very much might get a bit more time out of their phone before it starts to really step down. Because what will happen is the battery just won't hold as much energy because after so many cycles of being recharged, it's just, it's worn out. It just kind of wears on that battery and breaks the battery down. And so why is this? It's because heat is the enemy of the battery. Heat. And heat is generated when you charge the battery. So there's a lot to be said about this. But let's just say, though, besides constantly keeping your phone in a recharge mode, like it's not the best thing to be constantly charging. Give your phone a break, let it cool off, let it chill out. And it's obviously not good to store your phone in a hot environment, like a really hot car in the summertime. It's just not good as well. But it's also the same is true, though, for a very extreme cold environment. It's just not good for the phone either, in particular the battery. Now, this is something that I didn't know until I did some research, and that is that a lot of battery manufacturers, they recommend that you don't allow the battery on your phone to get below 50%. Now, it ain't going to do a lot of damage or anything, especially early on in the battery life cycle. But if you can keep your battery capacity or the charge of your battery at about 50%, or no lower than 50% before you recharge, this has been really shown to extend the battery life and even in, holding a capacity of charge. So that was really interesting. Now, is it going to be dramatic though over the span of a battery? I don't know, but apparently it's substantial enough to be brought up by various technicians and makers, of batteries. Fast chargers or quick chargers, this is kind of all the rave. I can charge my phone 1.5 times faster or twice as faster if I use this charger versus that. It sounds all great until you see how much damage it does to your battery in the long term. And even in, the medium term for a lot of batteries, it just doesn't do very well. And it goes back to the heat. Faster chargers or quick charge devices, they generate a lot more heat, and it puts that much more stress and it damages the batteries. So there's a reason why your phone comes with a standard charger, because it's the optimum system to keep the battery in the best condition and to minimize damage to the battery. Okay. And what I think is also really interesting is how to store a phone. Like, for example, if you're going to go overseas, and let's just say that you don't want to bring your phone, or maybe your type of phone really isn't going to probably work in certain countries or something, and you're going to store a phone for maybe a couple weeks, maybe even a month. Who knows, right? Could be a long vacation. We all need one of those. But let's just say, though, that you want to store a phone. What is the best way to do this? Now, I really didn't know for sure. I kind of thought maybe you would fully charge the phone and you just set it somewhere that is not exposed to a lot of UV light and a lot of heat. And I thought that would be good to go. And that's not really true. What is the kind of like the current best thought on this is that you charge the phone to 50%. And once again, it is a good idea to put the phone out of UV light contact and to put it in just a room temperature environment. That's good. And yeah, 50% charge is optimum. And if you have a phone that it's easy to remove the battery, then remove the battery from the phone and store it separately. Or you can store it side by side, but it's just separate. And I think that's pretty interesting because, what's the reason though, really, behind a 50% charge to store your battery versus having no charge or 100% charge? Well, I think it comes back to that a phone trying to hold a charge over time, it actually puts, I believe, a little stress on the battery. That's just kind of from what I understand. I could be wrong on that if you know more specifics. And obviously, though, a phone that has zero charge that's going to be left for a while is not good for any battery to have no charge. That would degrade the battery, even more to my knowledge. But so a 50% charge is kind of the happy middle ground. So it's not empty battery, but it's not a full battery. So I guess that's like the happy medium for a battery to coexist or just chill out in storage and have the least effect on the battery long term. Another tip here is to in an effort to increase battery efficiency, is to update your phone, update your apps on a regular basis. Now, I take a moment every weekend. I have this certain time every weekend that I pause and I just take my phone and I update everything. And there's typically anywhere from 5 to 12 apps that need to be updated. And when you update these apps, they become more efficient and they don't lag and they don't have security problems as they would before. So it's just something to do. Some people only do this once a month. I think that's actually kind of stretching it. I think for a lot of us, it's once a week. And it really doesn't take but just a few minutes to do this. Unless you have a tremendous amount of use on your phone, then you may want to consider a different timeline for this. Maybe it's like every 3 to 4 days you want to check your updates to see if there's updates available. But just for the average person, once a week, maybe every 2 weeks, you could get away with it. And it's going to help your efficiency. So that in some way, some updates may just do very little, but there could be some measurable difference in your battery usage if you have outdated apps versus updated apps. Another tip is to use your earbuds rather than the speakerphone. So the external speaker on your phone, obviously, especially if you just use the moderate volume output, is going to be a lot more of an energy hog than some small earbuds. Now, if you listen to music on your phone that it's on a very, very low setting, then it may not be a big difference. But if you're like most people that blare music on their speakerphone, that's going to be a big difference, really, than just using earbuds. Airplane mode. Now, this is a mode that really isn't so great if you're wanting to receive incoming transmissions, text or email or voice calls or video calls. But if you still need to use your phone off and on, Maybe you have something that you're trying to reference, like some kind of document that you're bringing up on the screen, but you need to conserve your battery power as much as possible. Then the airplane mode is just another option to extend the battery life. So if you know that you don't really have any calls coming in, or you're not expecting anything, maybe for the next 20 minutes, just put the phone on airplane mode as you use your phone for other purposes, and that might give you a little extra. In fact, it will typically give you a little extra battery power, than you would otherwise. Okay, so we also need to kind of pay attention to the signal strength that we have in our location. So the more of a struggle it is for our phone to receive signals from the cell tower and to transmit, the harder the battery is going to have to work, or the phone is going to work to transmit. So it's going to pull a lot more energy from the battery. So the better the signal strength, the more efficient the transmission and how long the battery life will last. Also, when you're not using Bluetooth or Wi-Fi features or hotspots, or some phones can generate a hotspot like mine, then you want to turn those off when not in use. And of course, if you're just trying to be overall more efficient, you would just keep them off, period, and not use those. Turn off any kind of GPS or tracking apps. Just the default on most main menus of settings, the setting modes on a smartphone these days has a tracking, button. And basically it just gives you a location tracking, and maybe for yourself, but also for other apps to know where you're at for whatever reason. And so, man, these location apps though can really burn up your battery over time because they're constantly updating and pinging for location. And for me though, I like my privacy too. So I don't like, every app out there to know where I am at the moment and just all that. So I just turn it off, on a regular basis. I just keep mine off. But that definitely helps your battery. Avoid taking pictures and videos. These are large energy hogs because there's a lot of data transfer, and there's a transfer to storage, and then especially if you're getting into editing software for images or videos. I use them all the time, but man, they really do a number on your battery. And so, they can just suck it dry. I've had full charges on my phone before, and 30 minutes later, using editing software and doing a lot of moving around of video content, I've actually really put a pretty substantial dent in my overall battery percentage. In some cases, in less than an hour, I can almost draw out about half of my battery power, which is insane, And there are some features on your phone that, you might only be able to do for a short period of time because, it's a full throttle on the system and your battery is just being completely, used in full demand. It is just being sucked dry. Let's move on here. And we only have a few left here. And of course, avoid playing music too. Not just, put it on a low volume and use earbuds, but just avoid playing music because that's going to really add up over time, in terms of using power from your phone. So if you're stranded on the side of a road in the middle of nowhere in a desert and your phone has 20% left of battery capacity and you need that extra power to make maybe an additional call to a record service, you don't want to sit there and just play music on your phone. You want to turn that off. And the last thing I want to bring up here is to turn off notifications, in particular the push notifications like from social media, and especially if you have notifications that actually show up even if you have a locked screen. So how when you're not using your phone or you turn off your phone and you have that locked screen, if you still have things popping up on that all day long and all night, that's a problem. That uses a lot of energy. So turn all those notifications or push notifications off, and that's going to be very beneficial. Also, what I've noticed with notifications is that it's a distraction. So I found that when I actually turn off all the notifications, for example, on YouTube, the channels that I have subscribed to on YouTube, I was constantly being dinged and overwhelmed with notifications. So what I've done, though, is turned off all of the channels that I subscribe to, the notification feature. So I get notified on none of them. And then at my leisure, which is typically maybe once a day, I just take a few minutes and I scroll down to all the subscribed channels that I have in YouTube to see if there's any videos of interest, and that's how I do it. So I don't want notifications, bothering me throughout my day. So I hope these things are helpful to you. Even if only one of these things help you, that's awesome. Of course, the obvious solution to all of this is just to have options to charge your phone when you need to charge your phone. So if you're away from the home, to have a car charger, right? Or an extra wall jack charger for the office. And of course, if you're not around a vehicle or a wall jack to access power, to have portable battery packs. And just remember to have your cables and all that. And, a lot of things can be simplified by just having backup systems, or just being, just in a very simple way prepared for things. So just have a few little battery packs that you can stash in your bags, maybe in your briefcase or in your car, in the glove box. Just have a few battery packs that you could use to charge your phone in an emergency. And what you can do, this is what I do, is once a month, I go to them all and I pull them all out of where they're at and I just top them all off. And you'd be surprised, a lot of them don't take but just a few minutes to top off. And I try to have battery packs that really work with the environment. So for example, in my car, I have a battery pack that stays into the console, the little console compartment. And that gives me 1.5 full charges on my phone. It's not a lot, it's a very small battery, but because it's so small, it doesn't really interfere with anything. It's just kind of almost not there. It's just so small. But when it comes to like my get home bag or my bug out bag, I've got chargers there that will give me about 7 full charges. So I got more capacity, right? And so you can also use your, portable battery packs for other things too. If you have a rechargeable light, a headlamp or a handheld light, or even a rechargeable radio and all this, you can use those as well if they run out of juice. So just some thoughts, just some thoughts about this. One of the worst things is to not be able to communicate with other people when you really need to, especially if you're stranded somewhere or have a medical emergency. That's like the worst thing, to feel that vulnerable. It kind of reminds me of being lost. No one wants to be lost. And when you get lost, it feels horrible. You really feel like you're out of control, or you have no control at all. And so, unfortunately, a lot of people these days don't carry maps in their vehicle. And even if they have them, they don't even know how to use them. And so that's a problem. And so if you're going to just completely rely on your phone, at least have a backup option to power that phone. Because sometimes we use our phone in ways that we just don't recognize that does draw more power than we realize, or we're just using the phone overall more than we realize. And I've been guilty too of getting in my vehicle and going somewhere for a few hours, and my phone only has maybe a 15-20% charge. I don't recommend that. I think when you leave the home, try to put as much charge in that phone as possible, just in case you need to use it. But this is where having a backup system or a car charger can really be so helpful, because if you realize when you leave the home that, oh man, I got only a 15% charge, well, you can do something about it. So anyways, I hope you guys are safe and good. You guys take care. Catch you later.